Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. System, I want to strengthen the first-level control of Earth elements. After murmuring, the system responded promptly. Ding, strengthening the control of the Earth element consumes 1,000 evolution points. Are you sure? 1,000 evolution points, that there are some scary numbers, but after thinking about it, Yu Ziyu also expressed his acceptance. After all, he is now a second-level extraordinary creature, and his strength is also quite terrifying. If the evolution point is not exaggerated, it cannot be justified if the ability is too strong. Thinking of this, Yu Ziyu also nodded and confirmed. Strengthen. After saying this, Yu Ziyu suddenly felt a shock at the root of the tree. Boom! There was a loud noise, accompanied by terrible vibrations, and Yu Ziyu's countless tree roots spread further deeper. However, this is not terrible. What is terrible is that Yu Ziyu can't feel any resistance, but instead seems to be in the sea. Like a swim. That while murmuring, Yu Ziyu's consciousness also sank deep into his body. Boom! There was a loud noise, and an inexplicable feeling came to my heart. It was thick and vast, as if it had accumulated for thousands of years. What was even more shocking was the feeling of kindness that came spontaneously. Is this the power of the earth? That while sighing deeply, Yu Ziyu noticed that the tree roots spreading deep into the earth were surging with an inexplicable power at this moment. It was just like the feeling just now, thick and boundless, but there was something, heavy weight. Give it to me. With a loud shout, the ground shook, and Yu Ziyu's countless tree roots suddenly exerted force. In an instant, like a big earthquake, 100-meter-long ravine continued to spread. Then, Yu Ziyu's eyes narrowed again. Boom! Accompanied by the terrifying vibration, this 100-meter ravine slowly healed without leaving any gaps. Within 100 meters, the earth is a plaything in my palm. As he said this, the canyon shook suddenly again, and in a corner not far away, a pile of earth thorns rose up. At a glance, it looked like a stone mountain, with an indescribable edge, and this was just level 1 control of earth element. Call. Taking a deep breath and holding back the excitement in her heart, Yu Ziyu said again. The system consumes 3,000 points to once again strengthen the control of the earth element. After saying this, Yu Ziyu was shocked again. This time, the feeling was even stronger. The tree roots buried deep in the earth were the medium between him and the earth. Compared with the rock snake, he and the earth were closer. The tree and the earth indivisible. The tree depends on the earth for its existence, and the earth can become more solid and thick through the tree. With the deepening of this understanding, Yu Ziyu's control of the earth becomes stronger. 100 meters, 200 meters rise. As the control distance continues to increase, the rich earth element continues to pour out from the earth and blend into the depths of Yu Ziyu's body. In just a short moment, Yu Ziyu's spiritual power increased by more than 10,000. And this increase in spiritual power slowly stopped until Yu Ziyu controlled the earth for more than 1,000 meters. Within 1,000 meters, my home court. Muttered in her heart, Yu Ziyu's vision also widened. Looking up, he suddenly discovered that a 10-meter earth wall had risen 1,000 meters away, tightly surrounding the entire Bayou Canyon, but for a moment. With a loud bang, all the earthen walls collapsed. At the same time, Yu Ziyu couldn't help but breathe in the fresh air. It's still too raw, and the newly strengthened abilities are not as mellow as before. Sighing in her heart, Yu Ziyu no longer cared about these things. Instead, she turned her eyes and pulled up the attribute panel. Level 2 Earth Element, the most fundamental elemental power that affects the earth, controls the earth, and even changes the earth. If it does not move, it will be gone. If it moves, the world will collapse. It is a terrifying ability born for destruction in the true sense. Looking at the evaluation given by the system, Yu Ziyu nodded silently. Indeed, others, not even the darling rock snake of the earth, have shown how terrifying it is to control the earth element. But it was different with Yu Ziyu. It can be said that every root of his tree is like a rock snake. A rock snake can already control the earth element, tear the earth apart, and cause major earthquakes, and Yu Ziyu, so many tree roots buried deep in the earth surged at the same time, really like an earth dragon turning over, enough to set off waves of soil tens or even hundreds of meters high, submerging everything. However, Yu Ziyu didn't dare to mobilize spiritual power on such a large scale. Exhaustion is still a trivial matter, the key is that the source is damaged, and Yu Ziyu may not even have time to cry. Extraordinary creatures like him have a scale in their hearts, and this scale is a measure of strength. If it exceeds this scale, it means desperate efforts manifested in mutated beasts. It is madness driven to a desperate situation, just like going berserk. What is manifested in him is the surging power at all costs. In the end, the source is exhausted, and he returns to his original form, becoming an ordinary willow tree. When can I control the earth like the roots of my own tree, like an arm, I can almost be said to be qualified. Having set a high standard for himself, Yu Ziyu also showed his expectations. If he can really control the earth element to that extent, he should be able to do it, travel freely across the land. No, it's not him who shuttles. But he travels through the land where he is rooted. In other words, it is to control the earth, turn the entire Bayou Canyon, and the soil hundreds of meters deep in the Bayou Canyon into a hole, and then realize the possibility of action. After thinking about it, Yu Ziyu felt more and more that this plan was reliable. At least, it's much more reliable than him pulling out tree roots and running under the sunset. Moreover, this plan also has lessons learned from the past, on the human side. Isn't this the same principle behind the artificial turf laid in stadiums, football fields, square green spaces, etc.? When it is necessary to move, the thin layer of soil is shoveled down and then moved manually. The principle is the same, but what Yu Ziyu did was a little shocking. After all, his current idea is no less than turning the continent into an ocean, and then turning a canyon or even a mountain where he is rooted into an island, where he can wander freely. P.S. Please give me flowers and collect them. Crimson was very helpless when she couldn't reply to the comment. However, Scarlet Red was helpless when she saw the Madonna. Could it be that humans really come to kill one, or a pair to kill a pair? Crimson feels that compared to killing, the current treatment is very good. It is equivalent to imprisonment and waste utilization. Dispose of it when it is no longer needed, and this is also a change in the protagonist's mentality. From fear to the current captivity, it can be said that this is the confidence brought by strength. Yu Ziyu is confident. Now, these people have no ability to stand up in front of him. As for the ability to get close to the essence of life, it is not difficult to understand. It is just a manifestation of assimilation. For example, they will awaken the ability of the wood element. Of course, this is only a possibility. In this case, Yu Ziyu is the source of their abilities, just like a vampire. Ancestor-like existence. In terms of life essence abilities, Crimson heavily references vampire abilities. Not only that, in order to be more reasonable, the extension of various abilities has some basis. Hope everyone can understand. All acquaintances know that Hong Kong attaches great importance to the comments of all book friends and will seriously consider each comment. Moreover, Crimson didn't write the Holy Scriptures, and when it came to killing, they were definitely more decisive than the other. To read the ununderlined version of the novel, please download Faloo. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After spending a full 4,000 evolution points to strengthen the earth element, Yu Ziyu was also a little tired. Still the same, although the evolution point is powerful, it still cannot erase the physical and mental fatigue caused by the strengthening process. In particular, the strengthening of the earth element is a test of mental strength. Now Yu Ziyu just wants to have a good sleep. Tiredness welled up in her heart, and Yu Ziyu slowly closed her eyes. However, at this moment, as if he noticed something strange, Yu Ziyu suddenly frowned. Looking for that corner, Yu Ziyu suddenly discovered that at some point, the burly young man who was seriously injured and on the verge of death had recovered as before under the influence of his life essence. Now he is jumping up and down in the treehouse in full swing, trying to tear apart the treehouse and leave. This guy. There was a cold snort in my heart, but then I thought about it, and Yu Ziyu also understood. This guy probably doesn't know the existence of Yu Ziyu. After all, he doesn't have Qianqin's ability to know the tree house where he is imprisoned, just the tip of the iceberg of a terrifying dryad. I have no interest in fussing, and I have no interest in cleaning up. Yu Ziyu was about to pin him to the tree house with a tree root, but for a moment, as if he thought of something, he suddenly sneered. The roots of the tree rolled up, and a monkey with bright golden hair, almost as tall as a 13 or 14-year-old child, appeared in front of him. Xiao Jin, give you a fun gift. Smiling, Yu Ziyu was already looking at the golden monkey with a blank look on his face. He rolled up the tree root and threw it into the tree house where the burly young man was detained. Now this monkey's strength has climbed to the 6th level. Level, not weak. Moreover, he eats the leaves dropped by Yu Ziyu every day, relying on the extreme absorption of his natural talent to continuously strengthen his body. Although his spiritual power is only about 6,000, his body is simply numb. According to Yu Ziyu's guess, this guy can walk around in a hail of bullets without any trouble if he protects the main injured area. But now, Yu Ziyu actually threw such a monkey into the tree house where the burly young man was imprisoned without saying a word. One can imagine what this means. However, before going to bed, Yu Ziyu still asked, "Try not to play to death. Of course, if you encounter danger, don't hold back. It doesn't matter if you kill it." At least for now, for Yu Ziyu, these obedient mutated beasts are much more important than these human beings. Moreover, of these human beings, the only one that really deserves attention is the girl named Xian Qin. Her ability is very strange, and the other two are just gifts at most. Buy one and get two free. One less is not too little. Time flies and it's already 3 strokes higher. Yu Ziyu woke up slowly and her body began to circulate spiritual power again. Vaguely, a steady stream of spiritual power surged up from the earth. How about those people? As if thinking of something, Yu Ziyu suddenly turned his gaze to several tree houses. What caught his eye for a moment was a black-haired girl, sitting quietly on the bedside, as if accepting her fate. On the other side, it was a burly young man with a swollen face huddled in a corner. Looking carefully, there was a golden monkey lying on his bed, with 2 legs, looking like an uncle. At this time, he seemed to notice Yu Ziyu. Squeak! The golden monkey made a magical cry, as if it was laughing. This guy. Shaking her head helplessly, Yu Ziyu also slowly opened the tree house. Boom! Along with the wriggling of the tree roots, a portal has been pulled out. Looking at this portal, the burly young man huddled in the corner suddenly felt excited and jumped up. But before he could get to the door, whoa! A golden light flashed across, and then, with a bang sound, a small fist landed heavily on the bridge of the young man's nose. Crack! The crisp sound of bone cracking made the burly young man shed tears. "I'm going to kill you." The fury continued, but for a moment, looking at the golden monkey with his waist at the door, the burly young man got scared, really scared. A night of getting along has smoothed his edges, and the roar just now was his last roar. Covering the broken bridge of his nose, the young man silently walked to the corner. Only vaguely, Yu Ziyu heard faint choking sounds. A broken nose should be uncomfortable, however. The most uncomfortable thing is his self-esteem. Of course, maybe not only that. Self-esteem, but also the mentality of being born as a human being and looking down on other species was completely crushed overnight. Being bullied by a monkey is enough. Smiling, Yu Ziyu didn't take it seriously. Instead, he turned his eyes and pulled the last young man. However, this time, his eyes suddenly lit up. This is, looking at the young man standing opposite a shadow in the tree house, Yu Ziyu was also curious. His eyes were slightly focused, and for a moment, a series of messages came into his eyes. Race, mutant human, level, enter the 6th level, idle talent, dark shadow. The body is filled with black shadows that can be materialized, can be freely stretched and deformed, and can even cover themselves with darkness. A very terrifying fighting talent. Looking at this young man in a daze, Yu Ziyu did not expect that another elemental talent, that was hailed as the top level by humans would appear. However, this time it is an extremely weird dark talent. TSK. Yu Ziyu was thinking about whether to train this guy. Humans can be considered one of the beasts. In that case, he would have 4 of the 9 beasts under him. Of course, Yu Ziyu now just thinking about it, before this human being has completely returned to his heart, it is good not to kill him. After they have taught the human knowledge of mutated beasts such as the 9 tails and the bull demon, Yu Ziyu will have to see how they perform. In fact, at this time, Yu Ziyu, thinking of the essence of life, if this essence, taken for a long time, can really enslave people's hearts, it would be really good. In that case, how could there be so much trouble? But it's a pity, before it has been tested by time, Yu Ziyu will never be too. Another ability that relies on the essence of life. If it fails, Yu Ziyu reuses humans again. That will be a big deal. in other words, unless these humans are willing to give everything for him, otherwise, they will always be marginal characters. In fact, they can't even take a step forward in Bayou Canyon. Whoever dares to take a step, Yu Ziyu will never mind if a tree root pierces his heart. When it comes to his own safety, Yu Ziyu is still very cautious. Faloo reminds you, 3 things about reading, collection. Chapter 79. You are listening at NaVoFold.audio. To be honest, the scenery here is pretty good. Looking at the lakeside not far away, the rising mist looked like a fairyland. The burly young man crossed his arms and couldn't help but smile. This was his 3rd day in the canyon, according to Qianxin's explanation. He also knew that he was being raped by the tree demon. Caught it, he casually glanced at the towering tree not far away, hidden deep in the thick fog, invisible, and the burly young man had goosebumps. Damn it, it is at most 200 to 300 kilometers away from the city. This place actually gave birth to such a monster. If this were known to humans, it would be a huge disaster, and, more importantly, this giant tree actually has intelligence. Gulu swallowed subconsciously. Even after knowing it for 3 days, the burly young man couldn't help but sweat on his back. This is too scary. The burly young man has no doubt that if humans know that extraordinary creatures reproduce with intelligence, the first idea that arises is to obliterate. Yes, obliterate, there is no doubt about it, the bad nature of human beings. No, every race should choose this way when it perceives a threat to its status. And now, there is such a terrible monsters are dormant in this canyon. Call. Taking a deep breath, the burly young man suppressed the tension in his heart. Although his heart was tight, he somehow could not feel any hostility towards this towering tree, more of a touch of pity. Vaguely, he could see nuclear weapons rising in the sky and earth like mushroom clouds in the near future. Extremely gorgeous, this is inevitable, absolute necessity. Not only the burly young man believed in this, but even Ling Feng, who was sitting far away under a tree, also believed in this. However, they firmly believe that if they want to survive, they still have to complete their daily tasks. Teach mutant beasts how to read and learn things on a daily basis. Just thinking about it makes my scalp numb, but the 3 of them have been doing it for 3 days. He raised his eyes and looked at the big white tiger squatting in front of him like a hill not far away. There was a hint of ferocity in his eyes looking down. The burly young man is also under a lot of pressure. It was this bastard who almost slapped it to death, but now, he not only has to teach him calligraphy, but also comb his hair, and he has become a nanny. Puff. A mouthful of old blood almost spurted out, but the burly young man forced a smile on his face, carefully picked up a branch used for daily teaching, and wrote the word tiger on the ground. This is the tiger, this is you. He was talking and gesticulating again. It wasn't until the big white tiger nodded slightly that the burly young man suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and started teaching the next word. But I have to say, I don't know if she is the one hidden deep in the thick fog. It fell from the dryad demon's body, and when he touched it in his hand, he felt waves of coolness, and even his strength fluctuated. Good guy, this tree demon is really full of treasures. And thinking of the green essence that this tree demon feeds these terrifying mutated beasts, the burly young man even licked the corner of his mouth. At this time, he always had the urge to kowtow before the tree demon. No matter what he does, improving his strength is the most important thing. In the eyes of the burly young man, this is opportunity and good fortune. If you can grasp it, it will be a lifetime of soaring. Of course, fear is definitely indispensable now. However, the burly young man is still trying to comfort himself. After a few more days, he will go to this sacred tree to express his feelings. As for humans, all in all, there was no racial war. Moreover, although this sacred tree was terrifying, it was still far from being able to fight the entire human race. In this way, he cannot be said to have betrayed humanity, and no matter betrayal, not everyone has a righteous heart. If a person does not serve himself, he will be destroyed by heaven and earth. The burly young man didn't want to be killed by heaven, let alone the earth, so of course he had to make a better choice. At this point, the burly young man, whose horns had been smoothed by the golden monkey, was so enlightened that it definitely exceeded the imagination of most humans. Even if Yu Ziyu knew it, he would probably be dumbfounded, and at this moment, on a trunk of the towering willow tree, a girl with red makeup swaying her white feet looked at the humans who were teaching the mutated beasts, and couldn't help laughing. "Master, what do you think?" "Just recycling waste." Listening to Yu Ziyu's nonchalant voice, Qing'er also chuckled. "Waste, okay, but human knowledge is indeed important to these little pets, enough to shape their very shallow worldview." Speaking of this, Qing'er suddenly paused as if he thought of something again, with a solemn look on his face. "Master, a big thing has happened to mankind recently. Do you want to hear it?" "What?" Rarely interested, Yu Ziyu asked. "Not long ago, the Free Federation on the other side of the ocean encountered the first large-scale beast tide in human history. Its scale was beyond the imagination of the entire world. Some people even used the phrase "this is the prelude to the Dark Age" to describe this beast wave." Listening quietly, Yu Ziyu's heart sank slightly. Large-scale beast tide, Dark Age, these words are not easy to say. At this time, gently stroking Yu Ziyu's thick branches, Qing'er also recalled the news he found, and added again. In the early morning of October 7th, a tsunami swept hundreds of meters high and swallowed up most of the city. At the same time, thousands of mutated sea monsters also swarmed into human cities, including several terrifying creatures that were extraordinary at the first level. An octopus monster's tentacles swept across dozens of high-rise buildings, and a mad shark more than 20 meters long surged in the sea water, opened its bloody mouth, and swallowed half of the street. Faced with such a menacing beast tide, the Free Federation was caught off guard and collapsed. A city was almost lost. In the end, it was the radicals who forced the decision in the pure white palace and used 3 nuclear weapons. There was a rare silence, and it was not until a long time later that Yu Ziyu sighed. Have humans still used nuclear weapons? Yes, it was used. As the mushroom-shaped smoke clouds rose, the sky and the earth became dark. Speaking of this, Qing'er's face changed slightly, with a strange look on his face, and he added. However, when I was looking through my mentor's copy, I discovered that the fall of nuclear weapons did not seem to be the end. Faintly, behind the 100-meter-high tsunami, there was a painful roar that seemed to come from ancient times. Not only did it shake the sky, but it also shook the trajectory of the nuclear weapons falling. 100-meter-high tsunami, shake the trajectory of nuclear weapons fall. With a cold smile, Yu Ziyu also felt slightly clear. If there are no accidents, there should be an extraordinary second-level disaster-level mutated sea monster taking action. Disaster-level sea monsters already have intelligence, and it is not a strange thing to be able to realize the horror of human beings. But for now, it seems like it's just a trial. Smiling, Yu Ziyu was also a little envious. With the sea at his back, these sea monsters had support, and they were really not afraid of nuclear weapons. However, he seems to be getting faster. Ha took a deep breath, and Yu Ziyu subconsciously mobilized his spiritual power. For a moment, in Qing'er's disbelieving eyes, Yu Ziyu's body actually sank, yes, sank, and he was stunned at in general sinking. Looking carefully, the ground around Yu Ziyu's body turned into circles of rippling swamps, and Yu Ziyu's thick tree trunk is slowly falling in the rippling swamp. Ability, Earth Escape. Another use of the earth element, turning the earth into swamp and going straight to the underground. Point 1_ To read the ununderlined version of the novel, please download Faloo. Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And at this moment, on another continent across an ocean, the highest peak of power, the pure white palace. Oh my God, who can tell me why the hell did this happen? Pressing his hands on the cold table, the top talker of the Free Federation glared angrily. A city, a very rich city, was mostly destroyed in this beast wave. There were countless casualties. He watched the secretary-president. With bloody numbers on the copywriting, the blond old man took a deep breath and said. Now, I don't ask about the process, only the results. Check for me why there is a wave of beasts. Also, what does the monitoring department do? What do those troops do for food? He roared at the top of his lungs, and the blond old man's face turned ferocious. Not to mention anything else, as the current top speaker of the Free Federation, he is already a sinner, and he also confessed. After handling this matter, he will take the initiative to resign. However, before that, he must clearly know the ins and outs of the beast tide, and the owner of that roar. Thinking of this, the blonde old man turned his eyes to the blonde woman who looked very capable and wore a formal suit. "Aaron, have you confirmed the news about the mutated sea monster now?" Nodding, the woman named Irene also took a step forward and swung her right hand. A very realistic three-dimensional picture appeared in the air. This is the prototype of the mutated sea monster generated by combining the records found on some surveillance cameras in the ruins and some images captured through satellites. With that said, Eileen explained again. According to relevant personnel, this mutated sea monster should be a large atavistic basilisk. Preliminary estimates are that it should be about 100 meters long and may weigh 70,000 tons. As for spiritual power index. After hesitating for a moment, Irene gritted her teeth, raised her eyes, glanced at everyone's gaze, and then she said solemnly. "This guy's spiritual power index has reached 220,000 during the active period. Even in normal state, it still has 178,000. He is a truly extraordinary second-level creature." Silence, collective silence. Listening to Irene's report, the entire pure white palace was silent. What is the concept of 220,000 spiritual power? It is already an internationally recognized disaster-level existence, and because it is a large basilisk, its actual combat power index may be higher. As if he thought of something, the blonde old man also sighed silently. In other words, it should be one of the strongest mutated creatures discovered since the revival of spiritual energy, right? Almost. Nodding, Irene also added. If there are no accidents, the combat power of this large basilisk can already be ranked among the top 3 of the top 10 internationally recognized extraordinary creatures. Top 3. Taking in a breath of cold air, the blonde old man also twitched the corners of his mouth fiercely. The top 10 internationally recognized extraordinary creatures are a ranking list compiled by relevant departments based on the destructive power caused by the actual combat power of extraordinary creatures. The spiritual power index is only secondary. The key is one's own combat power. For example, a huge turtle with a spiritual power index of over 300,000 is not even qualified to be on the list. Why? Just because turtles are not good at fighting, they are more good at defense. If such an extraordinary creature fell into the eyes of humans, it would be a mobile treasure trove, and there are extraordinary creatures who are not good at fighting, and naturally there are also terrifying beings who are good at fighting. And such a being would definitely be a nightmare if it were an enemy of humans, just like now, this terrifying basilisk, which is undoubtedly one of the top 3 in terms of combat power, destroyed half of the city of the Free Federation without even showing its face. Who would have dared to think of this before? You know, the Free Federation is one of the few superpowers in the world, especially its military. Usually, a few casualties would cause an uproar. Now, most of the city has been destroyed. No wonder, it shocked the whole world and was even called the prelude to the Dark Age. At this time, as if he thought of something, the blonde old man took a deep breath, looked at Secretary Eileen, and asked. "Can the condition of this mutated basilisk be determined at present?" Listening to the question from the top talker of the Freedom Alliance, Irene also nodded slightly and said in a deep voice. "At present, it has been determined that the life characteristics of this basilisk are constantly weakening. Until half an hour ago, it was determined that the life characteristics of this basilisk were lower than the normal index." Speaking of this, Irene also showed a look of helplessness on her face. However, after this guy ate a nuclear weapon, he immediately escaped and flew back. Now he has been pulled back to the depths of the sea. It is difficult for us to locate his position. Well. Sighing, the blonde old man also understood. Nowadays, no more than before, the sea is already half a restricted area for all human beings, especially in the deep sea. Strangers are not allowed to enter. If that mutant basilisk really retreats to the depths of the sea, even if it is as powerful as the Free Federation, it will be helpless. At this moment, what the Free Federation didn't know was that there was a deep sea very far away from them, in a long and narrow trench hundreds of meters deep. Hoo, ho, ho. The rapid breathing, wrapped in the narrow current, rushed in all directions. At the same time, a terrifying pressure that belongs to the top of the food chain continues to spread with the ocean currents. At this time, looking up, one can be shocked to find that an indescribable huge black shadow is already in the narrow trench. He propped himself up. Groan. Only a long and deep whisper was heard, and the entire deep sea was shaken. Immediately afterwards, countless seawater turned into streams and poured into the mouth of this huge black shadow. Countless fish were mixed in, including even ocean overlords like sharks. However, at this time, if you look carefully, you will definitely find that such a terrifying existence has lost half of its body. With less than half of its body missing, its already ferocious appearance looked even more terrifying, and those wounds continued to ooze scarlet blood, dyeing a small area of the deep sea red in just a short while. However, what is unbelievable is that as it continues to devour, its wounds seem to be healing and it keeps squirming. Just not long after. Groan. There was a sudden cry, and the huge black figure seemed to be unable to hold on any longer, and actually fell towards the trench. Only those eyes were full of violence and ferocity, staring in one direction, with an indescribable madness. Faloo reminds you, 3 things about reading, collection.